Hi, brief summary of the previous episodes. So, Mark in chapter 1, verse 1 states that this is the origin, arche, of the gospel to evangelium, of the good news of Jesus Christ, Son of God. All right. Then in verse 2 and in verse 3, he quotes from Malachi and Isaiah. Malachi chapter 3, verse 1, Isaiah chapter 40, verses 3. And what this prophecy, which is just one single prophecy, is about is God promising to send ton angelanmu, my messenger. God is going to send a messenger who's going to prepare his way, his coming, his appearance. And there's going to be a voice, says Isaiah, a voice calling out, crying out, prepare the way of the Lord. Lord is coming. Prepare the way of the Lord in the wilderness. And guess what? In verse 4, Mark tells us that this voice materializes in the voice of John the Baptist, who again appeared in the wilderness in Teeremo, exactly as Isaiah had prophesied, preaching baptism of repentance, okay, for the forgiveness of sins, eis aphesin amartion, okay. So the baptism, this rite that John the Baptist was performing, was to dip people in water repeatedly for a long amount of time, but it was purely symbolic. It's not the same baptism with which Jesus will baptize us. We're going to learn this later on. This water that John the Baptist was using was just symbolic. It was not special water. There was nothing in it. So it was just symbolic. The point of the baptism of washing themselves in the water was to cleanse themselves uh, from the sins, from the old way of living, and producing these, what Mark calls metanoia, so this change of living, this change of thinking, which creates a complete distinction, fraction between the previous way of living and the new way of living. It's really entering a new state of life. All right, and we saw even this symbolic place of where John the Baptist is baptizing is across the Jordan. That idea of crossing the Jordan and that specific place of the Jordan is related to two important episodes in the Bible. One is the crossing of the Jordan by the Israelites, led by Joshua, when finally they enter the promised land. At the same time, is the prophet Elijah crosses the Jordan just before ascending heaven. So, in both cases, the idea of crossing the Jordan River is connected to the idea of entering a new state of life. The Israelites finally enter the promised land and they're reconciled with God. Elijah enters and crosses the Jordan River and enters a new life in heaven. All right. So, very symbolic place, very symbolic rite. Now we are ready to tackle verse 5. All right. And we're going to start entering the text and reading and understanding the grammar first. All right, let's read. Kai exeporeveto prosauton pasa he Judea cora kai hoi hierosolumitei pantes kai baptizanto hupautu ento Jordane potamo exomologumenoi tas amartias auton. And here the verse ends. All right, pretty long verse, but we can break it down to make it easier to follow. First of all, there is a comma here, and in fact, there are two sentences. Okay, the first sentence that ends here, and the second sentence that ends there. So let's focus on the very first sentence. Let's try to find the subject of this sentence. Very easy. We have a structure where we get two different subjects. One is pasa he Judea Cora. Okay, this is the first subject. Okay, we're gonna see why. And then it's connected by a kai and this is the second element of the subject. This whole thing here is the second element of the subject, which reads hoi hierosolumitai pantes. All right. Now let's go with the first subject. First of all, why do we recognize this as a subject? Well, look at the ending here. Alpha, 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 and the article. Okay, this is probably the first time we see this article. We saw the masculine definite article. We never seen the feminine definite article. This is the feminine article, definite article in the nominative case, so it indicates a subject. All right. So here we're talking about feminine, right? Feminine singular, and we are at the nominative case, which corresponds to a subject. Okay. So this means just the. Okay, as we said in Greek, the definite article changes according to the gender, to the number, and the case. In English, is always the, right? And according to the feminine singular, everything is feminine singular, which ends in alpha. Okay, alpha, alpha, alpha. Okay. Now let's move on to the second part of the verse, the second part of the subject. Now you see that here there's another article. Okay, so we learned about this new article here. This new article is the same definite article, but now it's a masculine, it's plural. Okay, and again it's nominative, so again it's a subject, and again means just the. All right, but it's associated to something that is plural and masculine. All right, so you have this ending here. There are masculine plural in the nominative case. That means that these are subjects, so all these things are subjects. Now let's try to translate this. So the first part starts with pasa and ends with kora, starts with hoi and ends with pantes. All right, so let's see. What is pasa? Okay, pasa means all. Okay, it's an adjective. All right, and this pasa, you find it at the beginning of the structure of subjects, and at the end you see here pantes is the same adjective, means all. All right, all. Now here it's at the feminine singular nominative. Here's a masculine plural nominative, but it always means all. Okay, indicates all. um Judea Cora, probably you understand Judea is Judea. Okay, it's with a capital Iota, Judea. Cora means territory. Okay, means territory, and in particular is the territory around the metropolis. All right, so Judea was the region where Jerusalem was. So what Mark is telling us here is that all of the Judea region, all the Judean territory. All right. So all pasa, the Judean territory. All right. It's easy to remember pasa or pantes because there's a lot of words in English that retain this root of pan. Okay, that's the root pan. Okay, for example, Pantheon. Okay, probably you've been to Rome. There's a famous building called the Pantheon. Okay, Pantheon comes from the Greek pantheos, meaning all the gods, right? So it was a temple dedicated to all the gods in the Latin mythology. Okay, so pan is everything. You probably have heard of the famous motto of Heraclitus, Pantare, everything flows, and so on and so forth. So Pasa and Pantem is all the Judea region, all the region of the Judea. And the second part of the verse represents the metropolitan area. Okay, so the first part is the region, the whole region of Judea. The second part represent hoi hierosolumitai, very hard to pronounce, but you understand that this comes from Jerusalem, right? These words represents the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So what Mark is saying is that not only all the people that were living spread out across the region of Judea, but even all the people that were living in Jerusalem. Now, I want to draw your attention on how this subject structure has been built by Mark, because it's not by coincidence. You see that it starts with Pasa and ends with Pantes. So it's a repetition, and not only repetition. These are the most important words that Mark wants to highlight here. The first word of the subject structure and the ending word of the subject structure, they all mean all of them. Why? Because Marx wants to tell us here and emphasize that literally everybody in Jerusalem and everybody in the whole territory of Judea, we're doing what? We're going to get baptized by John the Baptist. All right. So where's the verb? Well, the verb is here at the beginning. Exe poreveto. All right. Let's analyze this verb. Um, First of all, you're going to probably recognize a Greek preposition here, this ex. Well, the real preposition is usually ek, okay, like this, right? Ek can get transformed into ex, like this, if it's followed by vowel, okay, as in this case. So in this case, it's followed by an epsilon, which is a vowel. So the kappa is softened into a c, okay. Otherwise, it would be too hard to pronounce. It would sound too rough. Ekeporeweto, it becomes exeporeweto, okay, exeporeweto. Now, this preposition in Greek, either ek or ex, has this meaning, means out of, okay, out of, all right. It's exactly the opposite of another preposition that we learned last time, which is as, all right. We saw last time that as means to, or even more, into, okay. It's a indicates a motion into something, motion into something. This is very important. X is the opposite of as. As means entering into something. Ek means exiting from something, getting out of something. Now, what is the real word? The real verb. The verb is here poreweto, okay, with this epsilon in front. So the verb, let's write it here, is porewomai, okay, porewomai. All right. Porewomai. Porewomai simply means to go. Okay. This ending indicates that it's a middle verb. In Greek, there are three possibilities. A verb can be conjugated in the active form, in the passive form, or in the middle form. Now, sometimes the middle form is a sort of reflexive. Sometimes it just retains an active meaning, like in this case, it just means to go. Porewoma is, it's a verb that indicates a generic motion. There's a lot of other verb in Greek that indicates that. For example, erkomai is just to go. This is a synonym of erkomai. And according to what preposition you put it in front, well, this motion could be towards something, into something, out of something, away from something, and so on and so forth. In this case is a movement out of something, because we have this x. All right, and what's the ending? Eto, exeporeuito. This indicates a third person singular. Okay, third person singular. Why? Uh, you may ask, it's a third person singular if the subject represents all the territory of Judea and all the people living in Jerusalem. That should be plural. Well, it's because it's attracted by the singular Judea. Okay, so all Judea went to him and all the people in Jerusalem. All right. Now, let's Pay attention to this epsilon here in front of the verb poreuomai. Okay. Well, the epsilon here, it's indicating that actually this type of verb is conjugated in the so-called imperfect. Okay, it's imperfect tense. Okay, imperfect tense means indicates the idea of a continuation. Okay, continuation. So it's an action that continues in time. All right. So what is Mark trying to tell us with this ex poreveto? It's telling us that people from all the region of Judea, from all Jerusalem, were getting out of their houses, ex. Okay, they were getting out of their territories, and they were moving towards John the Baptist. Okay, and this movement, this flow of people, was a continuous flow. It was not just something that happened once. He didn't say all these people went to him. No, they were going to him. It was a continuous movement, and it was a powerful, massive movement of people. Of course, Mark is using a hyperbole here, saying all of the people. Of course, not 100% of the people, but it's just trying to convey the idea that it was really probably tens of thousands of people. So it was not just, eremites or just people within a certain sect, maybe in the desert, maybe part of the Essene sects. The Essenes are those that are believed to live close to the Dead Sea, those that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some scholars even argue that John the Baptist was part of them. That's not the point. It's not just a few people. It was a massive movement, continuous movement that went on for days and days, probably weeks and months, of people really flocking from out of the territory of Judea to the Jordan River to get baptized by John. Is a very impressive type of image that Mark is trying to draw here. Now, let me show you this map. This is a map of the ancient Judean region in the first century, right? So you probably recognize already many places. We've seen this last time. We're going to go over this a little more in detail today. So starting from north to south, we have the Sea of Galilee, all right, close to Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. And then as you move down farther south, you have the Jordan River that connects the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea, okay, which is down here. Now, Jerusalem is right here, okay, so very close to the Dead Sea. And last time we pointed out that the place where John the Baptist was baptizing was probably across the Jordan River, so on the eastern side, probably close opposite to Jericho. Okay, so somewhere here where I put this cross. Okay, so what Mark is really telling us here is that all this region and the region of Judea was now I'm roughly drawing here the limits, but this was roughly speaking the Judea region. Okay, then you have the Samaria region right here, and up here you had the Galilee region where Jesus was preaching, right? And that's why in the Gospel you see a lot of time that Jesus to go down to Jerusalem, all right, he had to actually pass through Samaria. That's why there are so many episodes related to the Good Samaritan or John and James that get upset with the Samaritans because they're not welcoming them and they want to send fire from heaven and they get rebuked by Jesus and so on. So a lot of episodes related to Samaritan simply because Jesus was traveling back and forth there and he was constantly passing through Samaria. But if you understand the extension of this region All right, the center of this region is pretty impressive. From Jerusalem to Jericho, there's around 20-25 miles. All right, so we can even imagine that people from Jerusalem, they wanted to go get baptized by John the Baptist, they needed to walk in the desert, because this region is really rough. Okay, it's really rough. It's in the desert. There are rocks. It's a rough place. It's not an easy walk. All right, and it's 25 miles in the sun, and hours and hours, literally hours and hours, and then they would get there, and to get to John the Baptist, they needed to cross the River Jordan. All right, they needed to cross the River Jordan to get on the other side. This is the extent to which these people were willing to go and get baptized by John the Baptist. It was a massive movement, and we can really think about all the people from Judea, from Jerusalem, going this way, but then people from other region, from other areas of the same region of Judea, walking probably 50 miles or more to get there. Okay, and if you read the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew even adds that all the territories around the Jordan River, also people from there were coming. So probably there were also people coming from this side. And if you think about it, well, guess what? Jesus was in Galilee, right? And Jesus went down and probably traveled 100 miles or more down that way along the Jordan River through Samaria to get baptized by John the Baptist. All right, let's tackle the second part of the verse. The second part of the verse starts with a kai, and the verb. The verb is a baptizanto. You have probably already recognized this. It comes from the verb baptizo. We saw this verb last time. It indicates this repeated submerging people in water repeatedly and for a long amount of time. That's the idea of the verb baptizo. Now, the tense is the same. You see this epsilon in front is the same as this epsilon. So it indicates a repeated movement, okay? And this ending, to, indicates a third person plural, okay? Third person plural and passive, okay? So how do we translate this? Third person plural passive in the imperfect. They were being baptized. Continuous action. They were coming, and as they were coming to him, they were being baptized. Okay, they were being baptized. Now, they were being baptized by whom? Well, you have the answer here. Hoop out to, hoop out to. Now, some grammar technicality here that it's important to highlight. Now, one thing is this apostrophe here. Okay, this is not an accent. This is an apostrophe. An apostrophe usually tells you that something's missing, something has been dropped. And in fact, what has been dropped is an omicron. Okay, so this should read something like this: hupo. Okay, now why the omicron was dropped? Because the next word starts with an alpha, with a vowel. So instead of saying hupo autu, doesn't flow, just gets dropped, upautu, hupautu. Much easier and flows much better. All right, but the preposition behind is hupo. Now, how do we transliterate this hupo? Well, the pi, you know what it is. It's a p. The omicron is an o. The upsilon is transliterated usually in English with a y. And then we have an H. Where is this H coming from? Hypo. Okay. Hupo is hypo in English. Well, this H is the transliteration of this sign here. Okay. This sign here. This sign here that you probably already noticed many times, that usually occur on top of the vowels at the beginning of the word. All right. Every vowel basically at the beginning of the word has one of these signs. Um, it's called breathing. Okay, breathing. Now, there are two types of breathing. One is the breathing that has this curve on the left, and this is called rough. Okay, rough breathing. And then there's another one that it has the curve on the right, which is the smooth breathing. Okay, now the rough breathing usually gets transliterated as a proper letter, as an H. The smooth, nothing. It's completely silent. So, for example, these this breathing here, okay, is smooth breathing, and that's why it's completely silent, and you pronounce exeporeveto. All right, but when you get here, see here the article. Remember this is a rough breathing, and so it's like uh, hey, okay, hey. So it's not just it's hey. All right, hey, eudia cora. Okay, you see here. There's another rough breathing, and you have another rough breathing here. So this is hupo. So what does hupo mean? There are many words in English that retain their root. Um, Hypoglycemia, for example, means that you have lower or low levels of sugar, of glucose in your blood. Why? Because hypo usually indicates that you're low in something. Okay, and that's the idea. Hupo in Greek means below, under, beneath. Okay, so hypo means that you are below a certain standard, certain threshold, so a certain norm. All right, so hypo, hupo in Greek means under. So they were baptized literally under him. All right, it means by him. So usually hupo plus the genitive case indicates the person um, who does performs the action in the passive. So they were baptized by him. He was the one baptizing them, right? So what you see here is that hupo, the preposition hupo, wants the genitive case. This ou, we learned this from the very beginning, indicates masculine, singular, and so you have hupoto, so by him, under him. Now this is a third person, okay, singular pronoun, personal pronoun. All right, so by him. By the way, this huautu, this autu is close to this auton. It's the same personal pronoun, right? It's the same personal pronoun, but of course, in a different case. So here, this new indicates an accusative case because it's necessary after a pros type of preposition. Now, here we have X, we've seen this. It's a preposition that indicates emotion out of. And now here we have hupo, which indicates a status, a static position under something. And here we have another preposition, which means to somebody, right? So let's step back a little bit and let's see this. This means toward him, all right? So personal pronoun in the accusative case, simply because the preposition pros wants an accusative after it. So pros auton means toward him. Now let's spend a couple of time on this preposition. We already saw that ek or ex act as a preposition. So let's put it here, ek or ex, in case the preposition is in front of a vowel. As we already said, it means out of. All right, so it means that you are inside a place and then you get out of it. All right, it's a movement away and out of. Okay, then we saw that the opposite is ace. For example, last time we saw ace aphesin, for the forgiveness, amartion, of sin. Now that was a motion into not into a place, right? But in general, ace plus a place means into. Okay, into. So indicates the idea of entering into a place. All right. So it's exactly the opposite of ek or ex. Now, um, ek, the preposition ek, has a very similar preposition that we already saw. Is the preposition apo. All right, preposition apo, which indicates more or less the same idea, but slightly different. It means away from. Apo means away from. So not necessarily you start inside something. You just simply you start probably close and you move away. All right. It doesn't imply that you're exiting, you're getting out of something, just moving away from something. All right. And similarly, there's another preposition which is exactly this pros here. Now, right here, pros. All right, this pros, which means to or toward. Okay, toward, but not necessarily into something. So you move towards something and you just stop in front of it, up to. All right, this idea of pros. So Mark here uses pros auton because all these people were going toward him, up to him. Of course, they were not entering into him. All right, so that's why he doesn't use ace in this case. All right, then he uses X here because he wants to render the idea of people that are really getting out of their houses, out of their city, out of their territory to travel miles and miles to get baptized by him. All right. So let's get back to here. Second part of the verse, they were being baptized under him, by him. Where? Well, we have the answer here. En to Jordane potamo. All right. So you probably already understand what this means. This it's in the Jordan River. All right. So you see, and we already seen this before. The preposition en means in or at, indicates a position inside something, right? And it follows. It's followed by a dative case. Okay, and is followed by a dative case. Now, this is very easy to recognize because you have this Yoda subscript. Okay, you have it here, you have it here, and you have it here. This Yoda that is subscript here indicates exactly that all these terms are in the dative case. And plus dative means position, inside, in. So they were being baptized by him in the here to. We saw it in now we saw in te eremo the feminine. This to is a masculine. All right, is the masculine singular in the dative case. All right, and means simply the is the same definite article, but modify according to the gender, to the number, and the case. All right, and since the Jordan, okay, well the river, sorry, the river is masculine, is a masculine noun, masculine singular. Well, guess what? The article matches masculine singular. To potamo. Now, what's potamo? Potamos means river. Think about, for example, hippopotamus. Okay, hippopotamus comes from Greek. Okay, hippos, potamos. Okay, hippos means horse. Okay, means horse, and potamos means river. Okay, so the Greeks thought that thought of the hippo as a sort of horse, river horse, or horse living in the water. That's how they were defined hippopotamus, right? So potamos means river, and Jordane means Jordan, in the Jordan River. Now, notice something. This potamo here is not present in in Matthew. Okay, if you read Matthew has more or less the same passage. He uses more or less the same words, but in this particular expression, he just simply says "ento Jordane," in the Jordan. Doesn't specify in the Jordan River. Now, this could be just coincidence, but if you think about it, probably it's not a coincidence. Why? Well, because we remember Mark is speaking, is writing for a Gentile audience. Okay, he's writing for people living in Rome, for people living in Greece, for people living in Asia Minor. They probably never heard of the existence of a Jordan River. They don't know what the Jordan is. They've never seen it. They never heard about it. So if he had just put in the Jordan, probably people would be like, what is this Jordan he's talking about? All right. Is it a sea? What is it? Right. But Matthew, we know that he was writing for a community of Jews. Probably they were living in Jerusalem or around Jerusalem. So it would be silly to specify that Jordan was a river because everybody knew what he was talking about. He just had to say Jordan and everybody would understand what that means. So these little differences are not coincidences and corroborates the idea, and so are very interesting to notice because they corroborate the idea that Mark really was the interpreter of Peter and was really trying to preach the gospel to a Gentile type of audience, non-Jew type of audience, while Matthew on the other side is trying to reach out to a Jewish audience. Okay, let's move on to the last part of the verse. Exomologumenoi tas hamartias auton. Okay, let's focus on this very complicated word, very hard to pronounce. Exomologumenoi. All right, let's try to break it down. Again, we're gonna break it down in three pieces. Okay, we have the preposition in front, which probably you have already recognized is this X, exactly as this X here. It indicates, as we know, a movement out of something. Okay, and then we have the ending of the word of the verb that tells us a lot about the verb. Menoi. Okay, this ending here, menoi, is typical of a present participle type of verb. So it's a present participle, plural and masculine. Okay, masculine, plural, present participle. In which case? In the nominative case. So it means that this is a subject. Okay, why is a subject? Because it agrees with pantes. So a participle in Greek can be considered a sort of adjective. Okay, it's something that's specified that gives more information on what the subject is doing. So the subject is pantes, everybody, all the people that were coming out of their houses, of the Judea region, of Jerusalem. So what they were doing, they were getting baptized, right? And then Mark gives us some more information about what they were doing there once they were getting baptized. And so this present participle is adding this type of information. Now, this ending is telling us something more. It's telling that this verb is conjugated in the middle voice. Okay, middle voice. We already saw the middle voice here in this verb exeporeweto. We commented that this comes from the verb porewamai. Okay, and the same is true in this case. So this ending can be either middle or passive. In this case, passive doesn't make sense, so it's middle. The middle voice, we already talked about it, indicates an action that has some relationship with the subject. So the subject performed the action, and that action somehow has effects on the subject, him or herself, right? Sometimes it can be translated as a sort of reflexive action where the action is performed by the subject on him or herself. Sometimes the actions is not reflexive, but is an action that somehow is related to the subject. Okay, this is exactly the case, and we're going to see why. So we know that this is a present participle. It's masculine plural. It agrees with pantes, so it gives us more information about what these people were doing there. And it's conjugated in the middle voice, which tells us that they were doing something related to themselves. Okay. Now, what is the verb? We're going to see here. The piece in the middle gives us a hint of what the verb is. And the verb, we're going to write it down here, is the verb ho Homologeo. Okay, verb homologeo. What's the meaning of this verb? Well, we can even break it down in two pieces. Okay, one is homos, the adjective homos, means the same, right? Think about all the words in English that start with the prefix homos, right? Or like this, right? Homogeneous, it means that they have the same type of substance, or homonym, that have the same name, and so on. So that's the idea of same. And then you have the second part, logeo, which means to talk, to say, right? Logos is the word, means word in Greek. So homologeo means to say the same thing literally, right? So people were getting there, they were getting baptized, and they were saying the same thing. What does that mean? Well, think about it, right? They were all going there to do what? To repent and confess their sins. That's what they were saying. They were confessing, right? So all of these people were all saying the same thing. They were confessing they were sinners. Okay, so this verb means to confess. Okay, it's not just a declaration, a confession of something that is not related to themselves. Is actually a confession of their own sins. So we understand why Mark used the middle voice, because they were confessing something about themselves. Now, the most important thing here, I think, to put the stress on is this preposition here. So Mark doesn't simply say that they were confessing; they were confessing X. X, we already know that this type of preposition, X, means out of, right? Out of. Think about the word exit in English. Comes from the Greek. It means you get out of something, right? It's the way out of something. So this stress of these two prepositions in front of these two verbs, poiema and homologeo, Mark chooses to put this ex poiema, ex homologeo. So he wants to stress this idea of getting out. Now, I don't think this is a coincidence. I think Mark really here is trying to tell us something. And what he's trying to tell us is that these people were coming out of their houses, they were getting out of their comfort zone, they were getting out of their region, they were traveling miles and miles to get to the Jordan River, to cross the Jordan River and get baptized. Okay. And once there, they were confessing out. That's the literal meaning. So they were letting go out, right? So at that point, in front of everybody, they were confessing they were sinners and they needed to repent and they needed to change their old ways. This XX is strong. It's this idea of getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your old bad ways, sinful ways, and enter a new life. Now think about the Exodus. What is the Exodus? The Exodus is the powerful story of the Israelites being freed from the slave of the Pharaoh, and taken to the promised land across the Red Sea, right? The Red Sea opens up, and the Israelites are freed from the yoke of the Pharaoh, and then after many years, they are able again to cross the Jordan River and enter the promised land. Now, here, really, Mark is trying to tell us that this is the new Exodus, is the new exit. Exit from what? Exit from a life of sin. All right. So in this powerful movement that Mark is describing here of the Israelite coming out of their house, it's not just coming out of a physical place, but really is a coming out from that old sinful life into a new life. And there is this powerful idea of crossing the Jordan River, exactly as the Israelites had crossed the Red Sea. All right. And that they had entered freedom. Same thing here. The Israelites come out of their old, bad, sinful ways, and they cross the Jordan River, get baptized, confess all their sins, and renewed in a new life, They cross back the Jordan River, re-enter the promised land, finally freed from all their sins. All right. And um, what they were confessing, we are seeing here, tas amartias auton. Okay, we already saw what this hamartia means sins. So they were confessing the sins. Okay, so tas is the definite article. We saw many different types of definite article, the class in different cases. Tas in this case, with the alpha S here, indicates an accusative. Okay, case, accusative case, feminine plural. Okay, feminine plural, because hamartia is a feminine noun, and this is the object of the action. They were confessing the sins. Okay, the sins. So accusative, feminine plural. And now, what is this auton here? Well, this is very similar to this auton and to this autu. Okay, they all come from the same pronoun. This is a pronoun. Okay, the pronoun is autos. Okay, autos, like this. So here we saw it, the cleanse um, in the accusative. Okay, masculine singular. And then here we saw the cleansed in the genitive, masculine singular. Well, here we have the cleanse again in the genitive, but this time is the masculine plural. All right. So this meant him. Okay. This meant of. Sorry, it was hupo autu, so by him. All right, by him. The genitive is just there because it's required by the prepositional hupo. And this means it's a proper genitive, it means of them. So they were confessing the sins of them, the usual construction in Greek. They were confessing their sins. So we understand why Mark uses a middle voice here, because they were confessing not something related to somebody else. They were confessing the sins on themselves, their own sins. Whole thing, let's put everything together. And they were going out to him all of the territory of Judea and all of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and they were being baptized by him in the Jordan River, and they were confessing their sins. All right. So, this powerful image of tens of thousands of people coming from all over the place, traveling miles and miles, tens, dozens of miles in the desert, in the rough desert. They were getting there. And once they would get to the Jordan River, they were seeing John the Baptist on the other side of the river baptizing people. If they wanted to get baptized, they needed to go through the Jordan River. And we already talked about this symbolism of crossing the Jordan River. It means that really they wanted to change. They wanted to get their metanoia, that change of life, right? So the crossing of the river is the symbol of a complete transformation. Okay. And once they were there, they were letting all out all their sins. They were cleansed of all their sins because they were confessing in front of everybody all their sins. And then they were coming back and they were recrossing back the Jordan on the other direction and getting back to God. Remember that image of the Israelites that had wandered in the desert for 40 years and finally they were able to cross the Jordan and enter the promised land. This is exactly the same idea. These people full of sins, they finally realized that John the Baptist was really that angelanmo that God had prophesied about, that he would send, that voice that Isaiah had prophesied about, that would call in the desert, prepare the word of the Lord. Well, how do you prepare the word of the Lord? By forcing or inciting people to convert, to having this metanoia, this change, this conversion. right? And people were following him. Really, were flocking from all over the place. Were traveling there. They were crossing the river, symbolically getting cleansed of all their sins, confessing all their sins. They were submerged in water, coming out new to a new life, and then cross back as the Israelites did to a new life in the promised land, reconciled with God.